So there's a very famous Pablo Picasso quote, good artists copy, great artists steal. I have always struggled with this quote because I just don't know what it means oftentimes, right? I've always struggled in my own work being like, what does that mean? How do you apply that? And I think that, I've never tried to like sit and like research the meaning because I think that kind of defeats it. I think that it's maybe a natural progression that I'd find in my work someday. And for that reason, it's actually a topic that's never been discussed on this show. I think this show is, again, it's one of those topics that like you would totally expect me to get to a lot earlier, but I never have. But I think that coming now, we're in September, the end of September, almost a year into the show, I do feel that I have a better understanding of seeing this idea in my own work, right? Because it's always felt so like, almost like me, like it feels a little like dirty, right? To be like, well, I'm gonna steal something. Like I've never liked that idea. I've always thought of that as being, wrong. You should have your own good original ideas. And obviously that's why I haven't discussed it, because that's not what he means. He doesn't literally mean you should go steal somebody else's work. I think that I want to pitch this idea here today, not as a, not in its traditional form, because I don't know what its traditional form is. I don't know what the consensus around what this quote means is, and I don't want to know. I want to pitch it, the idea of stealing in art as the honest endpoint to inspiration. Because we've discussed at length, whether it's about identity or about art or about style, that there is no original thing, right? No matter what you're doing, it is influenced by something, somewhere, in some way. Sometimes that's in a way that's extremely subtle, and you don't even realize it. Sometimes it's a very obvious way. I mean, we've talked about the idea of reference points and how all of us at some level have these individual experiences of what we were exposed to when, you saw this painting when you were a kid, it always stuck with you, what your favorite movie is, and how these ideas can correlate into showing us what we're into, what we like, and what ends up displaying itself in our work. I think that obviously there's always been like a little hole in this idea of reference points, right? Like it's never been a bulletproof idea because you're never going to know 100% what's influenced you. You're never going to be able to sit down and be like, okay, I see this thing I liked when I was 5 in here, I see this thing I liked when I was 10, because you don't remember. I don't remember everything I liked. I don't remember everything I've seen my whole life. There are things that influence my work that I probably have no idea exist, right? And I think what we've called reference points this whole time are, in reality, things we've stolen. And not in the literal sense, not in the sense of like you copied these ideas that display themselves in your work, in a sense of, the sense of this quote, in a Picasso sense, I don't know. I don't even know if he said that quote. I think it was T.S. Eliot that said that quote. I'm pretty sure I heard that somewhere. It's one of those misattributions. But that's besides the point, of course. We're going to keep saying Picasso said it because, but everybody thinks it might as well be true, right? When we're taking inspiration from something, we see it as either learning from it or referencing it or paying homage to it, right? And we see that as like the natural way to do something. If you go further than that, you're stealing now, and that's bad. You're copying. And in school they call it plagiarizing, right? And that's bad. But as long as you're paying homage, as long as you're attributing, then you're doing something good, right? And I think this is an idea that I've always kind of resented because it's like, well, there are ways to make an idea yours. And I think that's exactly what Picasso means when he says that great artists steal, right? There is copying, right? Like there is to sit down and go, okay, I really like the work of Rothko. And sit down and be like, I'm gonna play around and see if I can find that work in my own work, and I'm gonna try and copy a bunch of Rothko's, see if I can get some of his techniques down, and try to learn that way. That is copying. Then there is the idea of I'm gonna try and capture the essence of this in my own work and see what I can discover within it, right? In that way, you're stealing, but you're doing it in your own way. I think it's almost a paradox because we attribute the word stealing to be more than copying, right? Like to copy would just be to kind of like take inspiration from, use as reference. To steal would be though to to claim it's yours. And I actually think it's the opposite way. I think that to steal is to add a lot more of yourself into the work than it is to copy. I think when you're copying, you're just trying to learn, okay, how do you get this stroke down? How do you do this technique? When you steal, though, I think you're trying to get a lot more of the essence in. I think you're trying to capture yourself in that work. And I think in that way, that's what he means when he says great artists steal. It's about instead of looking at your work and going, how can I learn from these other pieces of work? Going, how can I make my work say what these pieces of work are saying? You know, it's almost like this. When you're learning a language, you learn like certain words that are also have their equivalent in whatever your native language is. Like for me, I was learning Spanish in school. I would have had the teacher sit me down and be like, okay, hello, hola, like things like that, right? And you are learning to speak words in that language rather than going in and doing it in maybe a more, maybe an approach of looking at how these sentences are structured, where the language originates from, how these words work in a larger composition, right? That would be learning the language from the ground up and trying to achieve some sort of fluency in said language, right? I think that we can say that the artist's copying versus stealing exists in much of the same way, where what artists do so often when they're learning, what we're also encouraged to do, is to copy. You know, look at that work, see what you can learn from that, and then, you know, do a study, they have all these terms for it, of course. Whereas fluency is to learn to steal this work. Fluency is to look at a piece of work and go, how can I say what this work is saying? And I think that like we look at our reference points for things and we go like, okay, I have this, like, I'm gonna use this own painting as an example. I don't know the name of the artist, but I know there's this one poster artist I really like. And these strokes down here, these shadows, these messy strokes, they remind me of his work. And I like that a lot. To copy would be to go, okay, I've figured out how to do these strokes and that has made me a better painter. To steal would be, okay, what is making these strokes interesting? To keep going in until I can figure out how to make these strokes mine, right? If a reference point is understanding maybe why you like something that you do, I think stealing that thing is understanding why you yourself should do it. And that's where the more I think of this quote, I think that, there's no one way. There's no way to make something original. And I think that we all try to avoid that fact in our own artistic journeys in one way or another. We all have our own little ways of doing it, right? For some people, it'll be to try and just ignore the fact to make something original anyways. I think that's what the majority of people do. I think there's an honesty in admitting nothing's original. I'm gonna take all the tools of history that are in front of me, and I'm gonna use them because I think I can make something poignant that way. And that's why I think all of us should steal much more, you know? I think that also this idea is already preordained into us though a lot of the time. Like nowadays, I think more than ever, because nothing's as original as it ever has been before. Things are even less original. Everybody's stealing. You know, how many things on social media do you see that are made with the things? Graphic design is the most consumed art on earth now because of advertising and also social media. And graphic design is literally the practice of taking somebody else's assets and using them for your own project. Because of that, I think we're a lot more comfortable with this than ever. And I think if you're somebody in the classical arts, or classical art sounds so snobby. The fine arts of, painting, or maybe it's writing, maybe it's poetry, maybe it's music. I think you should copy. I think you should steal. I think you should do it. I think you should try it. I think it could lead to more poignant results in your own work. This is the painting. I don't know how I feel about this pyramid. I liked how it started. I like some of the texture over here. I like these brush strokes. Don't like this. So it's all right. I'll call it a half win. I like the contrast though. I really do like the contrast of the pink backs with the greens in these. I like that a lot, but that's the last of this palette. I'm probably gonna move to some different colors tomorrow because I'm gonna have greens over here. But check this out on the TikTok and the Instagram. Until next time, guys, gals, and pals, my name is Max Dices and Paint Talk episode 273. I'm here every morning, painting and talking with you all.